picture this for a second. You are standing in this tiny, really quiet village in the Italian Alps called Malay.
Okay, I can picture that.
Yeah. And there are mountains rising up on literally all sides. It is stunningly beautiful, but, it is completely isolated. You are utterly rooted in the earth, surrounded by ancient stone and heavy snow.
Sounds incredibly grounded.
Right. Now take that image and try to imagine the absolute furthest thing from it. You are probably picturing like a pressurized metal tube hurtling through the deadly vacuum of space.
Oh, wow, yeah. At what, 28,000 kilometers per second?
Exactly. Where dropping a wrench means it just, floats away forever.
It is the ultimate contrast, really.
Yeah.
You have this deeply grounded terrestrial human existence on one end and then, total detachment from the planet on the other.
And the leap from that first reality to the second is exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome to The Learner and to everyone joining us for another deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Our mission today is based on this fascinating document called What a Boarder Can Learn from Samantha Cristoforetti. We want to figure out how a kid from that alpine village ends up commanding the International Space Station.
Which is just a wild trajectory when you really look at it.
It totally is. Born in Milan in 1977, raised in Malay, an avid reader and a massive Star Trek fan. But we aren't just here to read her resume today.
Right, because her life is basically a masterclass in preparation, adaptation, and frankly, shared living.
Exactly. We want to extract those underlying principles of how she got to space and see how they apply directly to the microcosm of, say, a boarding school or an office or really any shared environment you find yourself in.
Because her path to the stars is so wildly nonlinear. I mean, if you were trying to design the perfect trajectory to become an astronaut, you usually imagine this very straight, highly optimized path.
Like going straight through military academies or aerospace giants.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But to understand how she actually thrived in a sealed metal tube for hundreds of days, we really have to look at her strategy for navigating Earth first. And it essentially comes down to a deliberate, relentless pursuit of discomfort.
Let's lay out those early years then, because this is where that pattern really starts to show up. At 18, she leaves the comfort of her home in the Alps to be an exchange student in the U.S.
Which is also where she ends up going to space camp, interestingly enough.
Oh, right. But then she decides to study mechanical engineering in Munich. Now, that means taking incredibly complex high-level math and physics courses, but doing it entirely in German.
And she doesn't stop there. She follows that up with a 4-month stint studying in Toulouse, operating in French.
Just adding more friction.
Mm-hmm.
For the grand finale of her academic tour, she spends 10 months doing research and writing her master's thesis in Moscow, in Russian.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. By the time she graduates in 2001, she has done this multiple times. But here is my hang-up with this whole approach. Why play your academic career on hard mode?
What do you mean by hard mode?
Well, if the goal is to master complex mechanical engineering, why intentionally add the massive cognitive load of doing it in a second, third, or fourth language? Isn't that just like a recipe for burnout?
Right.
Or a way to lower your actual grades?
I mean, if the only goal was getting a perfect grade with minimal friction, then yes, staying in Italy would have been the optimal move. But she wasn't just trying to learn engineering.
She was after something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was practicing what we might call deliberate displacement. When you move to Munich and have to learn fluid dynamics in German, the friction isn't getting in the way of your education.
The friction is the education.
Yes. Every single time she moved, she had to accept the total vulnerability of being a beginner again. She had to endure that unique fatigue of, not understanding how the grocery store works or the transit system.
Or just trying to articulate a complex thought in a seminar when you don't have the vocabulary yet. So she's basically building up a tolerance for feeling lost.
Even more than a tolerance, really. She is building cognitive resilience. Think about the boarding school environment for international students. A teenager leaves their home country, enters a totally new academic system, perhaps in a new language.
Surrounded by a completely foreign culture.
Right. It is exhausting. Your brain is working overtime just to process baseline reality. But that exhaustion has a purpose.
Because when a student manages that transition, or when they keep pushing forward when the learning curve feels impossibly steep, they are building an endurance that you just cannot teach in a textbook.
Exactly. Cristoforetti didn't arrive at the ISS and suddenly figure out how to handle the isolation and confusion of a totally alien environment. She got there because she had spent a decade intentionally practicing the art of being uncomfortable.
Okay, I see the value in that resilience, but let's look at the specific tools she used to navigate all that displacement language, because her linguistic resume is incredibly heavy.
It really is.
She speaks Italian, English, German, French, Russian, and Chinese. She actually trained with Chinese astronauts, which is amazing. But again, I kind of have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
We're talking about commanding a multi-billion-dollar piece of orbital hardware. If a life support valve blows out on the station or a solar array gets jammed, does it really matter if the commander can ask for a wrench in 6 different languages?
That is a fair question.
Like, is linguistic empathy really a hard requirement for a highly technical, hard science job?
It matters immensely because in an extreme environment, crises are rarely just technical. They are almost always interpersonal.
Oh, that is a really good point.
Yeah, when a valve blows out, the crew has to solve the problem together under terrifying pressure. And teams break down when there is a lack of trust or a failure in communication. Learning 6 languages isn't just a parlor trick.
It is a massive record of commitment to other people.
Think about what it actually takes to learn a language as an adult.
It takes a willingness to sound incredibly foolish for a very long time.
Precisely. You have to endure making constant mistakes. You have to strip away your ego and be completely vulnerable in front of strangers.
And by putting in those unglamorous, frustrating hours to learn Russian or Chinese, she is sending a really profound message to her colleagues.
She is saying your world, your culture, and your perspective are worth understanding on their own terms.
Yeah.
I am not going to force you to filter your reality through my comfort zone.
Which creates a foundation of deep trust. And that maps perfectly to living in a diverse boarding house, right? Crossing cultural boundaries in a shared kitchen or a dorm room isn't just about trying different foods.
No, it requires that exact same ego death.
When you choose curiosity over assumption, when you ask a housemate why they do something a certain way instead of just judging it, you are putting that same interpersonal work. You are building trust for when the inevitable conflicts pop up.
And we see that same commitment to grueling, unglamorous work in her military career, too. After university, she joins the Italian Air Force as one of its first female officers. She completes the Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program in the U.S., earns her fighter pilot wings in 2006, and logs over 500 hours in aircraft, like the AMX ground attack fighter.
We should pause on that for a second, because ground attack fighter sounds intense, but what does that actually mean for the human body and mind?
It is incredibly taxing.
I mean, flying a jet like the AMX isn't like cruising at 30,000 feet on autopilot. You are flying low, fast, and constantly reacting to terrain and tactical variables. The cognitive overload must be just immense.
Oh, absolutely. You have to process a wall of data, manage your physical response to G-forces, and make split-second decisions where the margin for error is essentially zero.
It is the ultimate test of managing your own internal state while operating complex machinery. Which kind of perfectly brings us to 2009. She's 31 years old, and she throws her hat in the ring for the European Space Agency's astronaut selection process.
And 8,000 people applied for that intake? 8,000 highly qualified, brilliant individuals.
And ESA selected 6?
Just 6.
The math on that is staggering. You go from being an elite fighter pilot to being a needle in a massive haystack. But the timeline here is what really catches my attention. She is selected in 2009, but her first launch isn't until November 23, 2014.
That is 5 solid years.
And it wasn't 5 years of just hanging out in a lounge. It was 5 years of invisible preparation, getting certified as a Soyuz flight engineer, completing robotics qualifications.
Working management roles at the European Astronaut Center, and of course the EVA training.
Right, spacewalk training, which again, we often visualize as this serene, floating ballet out in the cosmos.
The reality of an EVA is brutal. You are in a pressurized suit that fights your every single movement. Every time you bend your arm or close your fingers around a tool, you are literally pushing against the resistance of a pressurized balloon.
Oh, wow.
Imagine trying to do highly technical plumbing work while wearing 3 layers of stiff oven mitts underwater for 6 or 7 hours straight while your body temperature fluctuates wildly.
See, this is where I think our modern culture completely misses the mark. We are just so obsessed with the moment of the launch.
Oh, entirely. We want the fire and the smoke.
Yes, we want the dramatic countdown, the overnight success. But we completely ignore the half-decade of agonizing, invisible preparation that made the launch possible. 5 years of waking up, studying Russian manuals, doing physical conditioning.
practicing emergency procedures in a simulator over and over for a flight that, frankly, could be canceled at any time.
Exactly. And that concept of invisible work is really the backbone of any real achievement. Preparation is not a strategy you just pull out the night before a crisis.
No, it is the daily accumulation of readiness. If we look at a student in a demanding academic program, the study sessions done on a random Tuesday when no test is imminent.
The daily adherence to house routines.
Right. The quiet commitments made when no one is handing out awards, those aren't interruptions to your life, they are your life.
The preparation is the work itself. You don't show up to the launch pad and say, all right, let's figure out how this rocket works.
That would be a disaster.
The skill you try to invent for the first time under immense pressure is almost guaranteed to fail. The launch in 2014 was just the moment when 5 years of invisible preparation was finally called upon.
Which brings us to the actual destination.
Right. She launches from Kazakhstan and spends 199 days and 16 hours in space. At the time, that was the longest uninterrupted spaceflight for a European astronaut.
And she didn't just survive it. She brought a tremendous amount of humanity to the mission. I mean, she literally brewed the first espresso in orbit.
Which is perhaps the most essential Italian contribution to space exploration ever.
Unquestionably.
She opened her work shifts with Star Trek quotes, just fully geeking out over finally being in her own version of Starfleet. She even dedicated all the proceeds from her memoir, Diary of an Apprentice Astronaut, to UNICEF.
She is just a remarkable person. And she later returned to space in 2022 for another 170 days, becoming the first female European commander of the ISS during Expedition 68.
But I want to dig into the physical and psychological environment of those hundreds of days up there, because it is very easy for us on Earth to romanticize living in space.
Let's strip away the romance for a minute. The International Space Station is roughly the interior volume of a large house. It is a completely sealed, meticulously climate-controlled machine.
You are literally locked inside.
There is no going for a walk around the block to cool off after a frustrating meeting. You cannot crack a window for fresh air. You cannot have a meal truly alone.
You are in constant, intimate, unavoidable proximity with an international crew. You hear them chew their food, you smell them, you hear their every single conversation.
The friction of that must be unbelievable.
On Earth, we use physical distance to manage our social friction, If someone annoys you, you just walk away. On the ISS, you have to manage your emotions, your fatigue, your fears, and your interpersonal disagreements entirely within your own mind.
Because there's nowhere else to put them.
Exactly. And that profound lack of physical space requires an incredibly high level of self-awareness. It all really boils down to an insight she wrote in her memoir, which essentially captures the core thesis of everything we are discussing today.
What did she say?
She wrote, I do feel more profoundly convinced of the need for us all to live on this planet not as pretentious, quarrelsome passengers, but as members of a crew on the same spaceship, loyal and ready to roll up our sleeves.
Passengers versus crew. That is the dividing line.
Let's really pull that apart because it applies to literally every shared human environment. Think about how a passenger behaves on a commercial flight. A passenger just consumes the experience.
Right. If the flight is bumpy, they complain.
If the food is cold, they complain.
Right.
If the person next to them is encroaching on their armrest, they look for a flight attendant to come fix it. Their entire mindset is totally passive.
It is very much, I paid for this ticket, I am owed a smooth ride, serve me.
Yeah.
The passenger outsources all responsibility for their environment to someone else.
But a crew member has a fundamentally different relationship to the space they occupy. A crew member grabs a wrench.
Yes. If a system is failing, they don't look around for management, because they are the management. They take total responsibility for the integrity of the shared module.
And if we apply this directly to a boarding house or an office or even just a family home, the exact same dynamic dictates the quality of life. Are you operating as a passenger or are you acting as crew?
In a boarding environment, a passenger leaves their dishes in the sink, just expecting the communal magic of the house to clean them.
They isolate when they are stressed, and they drag the mood of the room down without caring how it affects anyone else.
While a crew member notices when a housemate is struggling academically or emotionally, and they actually intervene, they take out the trash before it overflows without needing to be assigned a chore.
But perhaps the most difficult aspect of being crew, and this is something Cristoforetti had to truly master, is managing your own emotional state.
Because in a sealed environment, your bad mood is not a private event. Your stress, your anger, your anxiety, They literally become part of the communal atmosphere.
Your behavior actively shapes the lived reality of every single person who shares that space with you. Your attitude acts as the emotional climate control for the room.
If you run hot, if you are constantly reactive and irritable, everyone else in the house is forced to sweat. They have to walk on eggshells to manage your unmanaged emotions.
But if you are calm, if you maintain your composure and offer help, everyone else can breathe easier.
Cristoforetti attributes her success to a combination of great education, relentless hard work, and a healthy dose of luck. But when you strip away the astrophysics, the orbital mechanics, and the fighter pilot wings, it all comes down to something much more fundamental.
It comes down to how you treat the people inside the shared module you live in.
She commanded individuals from multiple nations, operating in multiple languages, locked in a metal tube 400 kilometers above the Earth. And she achieved that not just by having the highest technical competence, but by leading with genuine human care and a crew-first mindset.
Which means the people listening to this right now, whether you are an international student trying to find your footing, an employee navigating a complex team, or just someone trying to keep the peace in your own home, you have the daily opportunity to practice the exact same qualities that make a great astronaut.
You get to do it in circumstances that, let's be honest, are far less lethal than the vacuum of space.
Thankfully, the stakes might not be orbital, but the mechanics of human connection are completely identical.
Absolutely.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of territory today, from a quiet alpine village where a young girl reads science fiction, all the way to the command seat of the International Space Station.
It is quite the journey.
And the most vital takeaway here is that Samantha Cristoforetti's extraordinary qualities aren't innate superpowers. Her resilience, her deep empathy, her technical leadership, these are things that are built.
They are constructed day by day through choosing deliberate discomfort. They are forged through doing the invisible preparation when absolutely no one is watching.
And through making the daily, active choice to be a crew member rather than a passenger.
It serves as such a potent reminder. As she noted, the view from up there makes all the grueling preparation totally worth it. But the life you are building right now down here, with all of its daily friction, its language barriers, and its invisible work, is worth that exact same level of dedication.
Definitely. Whether you are studying late at a boarding school, navigating the politics of a new job, or just trying to be a decent neighbor, you are currently operating your own version of the ISS.
The quality of your daily life and the lives of the people trapped in the module with you depends entirely on the mindset you bring to the table.
And that leads to a final thought I want to leave you with, which scales this whole concept up to the highest possible level.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We have spent some deep dive talking about how the International Space Station is a sealed, climate-controlled module that requires extreme interpersonal care and a dedicated crew mindset just to keep everyone alive.
Right.
But if we pull the camera back, Earth itself is just a much larger, sealed module traveling through the absolute zero of space. There are no supply ships coming from somewhere else. There is no outside help coming to fix our life support systems.
So if our entire planet is just one giant spaceship, what stands out to you about your own role? Are you acting as a passenger, complaining about the turbulence and waiting for someone else to fix the climate control and manage the communal peace? Or are you ready to roll up your sleeves, grab a wrench, and act as its crew?